And welcome to the Thursday, or as we like to call it around here, the Friday Eve edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Very glad you're able to spend a few minutes with us as we get you set up for the weekend. And what a difference a day makes, right, when it comes to the weather. Yesterday, we saw 7 degrees. We saw some melting. I saw people out in shirt sleeves and some even in shorts. I don't know, maybe a little early for that, but in shorts. And we saw lots of melting. We saw some of the snowbanks drop. I saw some of the icicles that were living on my building forever are gone now. Thank goodness they didn't fall on anybody. And now we've seen almost a complete switch. Today we're looking at -5, right? It was warmer early in the day. That's when we hit our guaranteed high. But -5 today is where we're expected to land this afternoon. And then overnight tonight, -13. I thought we were done with this stuff. Chatting with somebody here before coming on the air and looking forward into the forecast. And I got to tell you, the weekend forecast looking pretty good, and the beginning of next week is looking outstanding. Some maybe wishful thinking that we're through the worst of winter now, and maybe we're into a warm-up in the spring, but I often remind them that we still have to deal with Sheila's brush, right? And that St. Patrick's Day storm that is tradition around here. But I tell you what, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of you out there that will take this weather, right? And I certainly will as well. It looks as if we may see double-digit temperatures on the Monday, Tuesday next week. So something to look forward to, I should say. City Council and budget deliberations continue. You heard on the open hour yesterday some of the discussion surrounding buses. Well, I watched it last night, and it looks like City Council has approved a fast tracking of sorts of 10 new articulated buses for the area. Some on council suggesting that this is going to alleviate some of the congestion on the buses. People tell me that, and I'll be very upfront, I don't ride a bus. But I talk to people who do, and they say that on some of the major routes, they're quite stuffed full of people. And there are some areas that were identified as part of the debate yesterday that are lacking in bus service. So City Council, amongst all of the decisions that are to be made with regards to our budget for the year and, of course, what we're going to pay in taxes, decided to spend $14 million on 10 new articulated buses. That is going to happen this year. That's part of the broader program. I think it's either 30 or 33 buses that are part of the broader program, and this is to sort of carve these 10 out of that chunk and get them done now so that we can deal with some of the issues that are impacting Halifax transit right now. The other big one that came off that I wrote down when I was watching yesterday was paid parking on Saturdays will now be a thing here in HRM. Council deciding yesterday to move forward with a plan to A, raise the parking fees, the money you pay to park in downtown areas, by 25%, and to institute paid parking on Saturdays. So once the budget passes, the days of enjoying free parking on Saturdays in downtown Halifax will be a thing of the past. Free parking on Sundays remains, but you're going to have to pay to park on Saturdays. Part of the deal is that the first hour of parking will be free, but if you're there longer than an hour, then you'll have to pay. Interesting logistic problem, maybe? That's going to be the parking, for some, the parking system that we have now, those that are using the machines are using the app. Sometimes it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. But your first hour will be free, and I'm assuming that because it's all digitally done now, or it's done at the boxes that are in the parking zones, that it'll if you ask for 3 hours, it'll make you pay for 2, that kind of thing. So that, according to city stats, is going to generate somewhere around $1.3 million a year. That's the 25% increase in the fare and the parking on Saturdays. Also discussed yesterday, and has been a contentious issue around the council table, and that is the budget of the mayor's office. And that, after lengthy debate yesterday, Council passed a $33,000 reduction in the mayor's budget for the coming year. Now, there were some that were quite upset about that and had asked for an FTE, which is technobabble for a full-time equivalent position. So essentially a full-time job to be eliminated from that budget, and $33,000 is about half of that, if my math is correct. So council passed a $33,000 reduction in the mayor's budget. More budget deliberations this week as council works their way through what the mayor calls the parking lot of these overs and unders. And hopefully at the end of it, we'll know what we're going to face for a budget increase, a tax increase for our tax bills in the coming year. Did you see the coverage or were you at the protest yesterday in front of Province House? There were thousands of people down there, folks, and it made the national news. The Premier actually walked through the crowd. He was going from Province House to the offices, which are across the street. There's no other way. So he was surrounded by security people and worked his way through the crowd. Didn't stop, didn't acknowledge, didn't do anything. But I'll tell you, having had conversations with Premier Houston in here in the past, he didn't look like he was enjoying his walk. I think the crowd were letting them know their feelings about some of the budget decisions that were made that have impacted the arts community, the culture community, the tourism community, and, of course, the broader public service. They were loud. You could hear them throughout the scrums after question period yesterday. You could hear them through the windows at Province House. But did the message resonate? We saw the opposition leaders saying that the Premier's going in the wrong direction. We've talked to them, of course, both of them here, and kind of said the same things that they said to us here on the program when they were in the crowd. But the Premier yesterday was asked the question and was pushed by reporters at Province House and said that there will be no changes to the budget cuts. So a government that listens to the people may not be listening to the people as much as they think we are. Anyway, that was, like I said, made the national news yesterday, and it was certainly a good turnout. The weather certainly helped, right? It was a beautiful day downtown, and a lot of people came out. Lots of signs, lots of chanting, lots of singing, lots of music being played, and I hope that it kind of showed that the arts community is united in its opposition to these cuts, and maybe will change the Premier's mind. On the international stage, of course, the war in Iran continues, and despite the briefing yesterday that we watched from the Pentagon with the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Kane, they said that they're making good progress. Pete Hegseth saying that that the Americans by the end of the week will have complete air superiority over Iran, and that the amount of the access to their munitions is shrinking by the day. All that being said, there was another round of attacks launched from Iran to various areas yesterday. Israel was certainly targeted, and as were American bases in the region. Also, some drone attacks and ballistic missile strikes in a number of different areas, including Azerbaijan, that's a new target for this latest war. But places like Abu Dhabi saw some strikes, and so did Doha, as the region continues to be pelted by these missile and drone strikes from Iran. And, of course, Iran itself continues to be bombarded, as is Beirut in Lebanon, as the Israelis continue their campaign against Hezbollah in that region of the world. Mark Carney has been on the road. He's been traveling on the other side of the world, really, in Australia, and was cornered yesterday by reporters who asked him a question about Canada's involvement, or a potential for Canada's involvement in the war in Iran. And Mark Carney was very political in his answer. He's been very, and I guess it's maybe part of the job description, but he's been very political throughout this entire week, where Early on, he said that the Canadian government supports the U.S. and Israel strikes on Iran and to rid it of the potential for nuclear weapons, but then called into question, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, the legality of the action, the if this violated international law. Then asked yesterday about Canada's involvement or the potential for Canada's involvement in the war in Iran. He said one can never categorically rule out participation, and Canada will stand by its allies when it makes sense. So to me, looking at this from 50,000 feet, it looks like Mark Carney is saying, well, we're not really looking at this, but he didn't close the door. So I think that might be something that we'll discuss today in the open hour, which is going to happen after 11 o'clock. And I'm going to ask the question, should Canada be involved militarily in the war in Iran? Looking forward to your answers to that when we have our Thursday or Friday Eve edition of the open hour. And that's going to happen after 11 o'clock. We're going to take our first break here on the program. And when we come back, we're going to kick things off with the introduction of an old friend of the program, but an old friend in a new job. You will remember Don Bureaux from his time at NSCC, as I like to say, in the corner office, taking up a new job as the CEO of the Halifax Chamber of Commerce. A conversation with the new boss at the Chamber after the break. Welcome back to our next guest, no stranger to the program and his former occupation as the boss over there at NSCC, and has taken up a new mantle and probably has a new business card and maybe even a new desk and a new office. And that, of course, is Don Bureaux. Don, how are you?
Morning, Dan. All the above. New desk, new business card. I'm all ready to go. How are you, my friend?
I am well. Tell me a little bit about the journey to this position, Don. Why did you decide to make the change?
Yeah, I've always been a long-time admirer of the Halifax Chamber of Commerce. I just so deeply believe in their work with our local business community. And where the world finds itself right now, I'm pretty bullish about the future of Nova Scotia, the future of Halifax, and the opportunities ahead. And after spending 15 years as president of NSCC, I felt it was time for a change, and this opportunity came up. And what a wonderful change it's been.
Don, I have to ask you about the provincial budget and the impact that it's having, and I know that that institution has received a funding cut as many others across the province. Your thoughts on the latest budget, particularly when it comes to these grants and this funding cuts?
Yeah, Dan, look, great question. It's certainly been something that people have been paying attention to all week, including the 2,000 members here at the Chamber of Commerce. You know, look, we're facing kind of two truths right now as a province. One is we're in a very difficult world. Nova Scotia is not alone. Our provinces in Atlantic Canada, our friends across the country are experiencing the geopolitical disruption of the world, and times are tough. And governments are having to make very, very difficult decisions. And the other truth that's relevant right now is Nova Scotia is positioned very, very well for what's coming ahead. Our federal government has made significant announcements in the area of defense spending, in the area of energy, and those changes are going to make or present great opportunities for our province. Right now, we're in a difficult place. We have to make short-term decisions that are difficult as a province, as a business community, but also we have to get ready and be able to transition to what's ahead.
That defense announcements, or those announcements you mentioned, Don, certainly have caught the attention of the Premier. Having conversations with him on the air here in the studio, and the mayor of HRM is very bullish on those as well. This could be a game changer. This could be akin to the shipbuilding contract. Am I correct?
No doubt about it. The shipbuilding contract, I think, is an excellent example to refer to. We proved, quite frankly, Dan, to the world that we're the best shipbuilders in the world. We have interest from around the world coming to look at the technologies that we're developing here and the ships that we're building. Both in my previous role and in my current role, we've had a large involvement with our business partners, the industry sector, who are part of the supply chain to contribute to that wonderful project. And I think that has set us up very well as a province to really take advantage of the need for our country, quite frankly, to focus more on our sovereignty, our security, not only from a defense point of view, but also from an economic point of view.
Don, what's the biggest challenge facing businesses in Nova Scotia, and particularly here in Halifax at this point?
Yeah, again, it's how do we transition? You know, the world is in the midst right now of a major kind of global economic realignment. The business community in Nova Scotia has always proven itself to be able to compete, I think, with the best in the world. And right now, we're asking ourselves as a business community and as a not-for-profit community, we need both vibrant in a vibrant economy. And it's a transition phase, I think, for many of us. How do we understand and take advantage of this massive opportunity coming our way? And how do we kind of exploit, Dan, the new technologies of artificial intelligence, of blockchain computing? And if whether you're a small business or a large multinational in Nova Scotia, there is significant opportunities for us to leverage that technology to make Nova Scotia even a more competitive global player.
There has to be some concern in your membership, Don, with the world events that have happened over the last week or so, and the increase in energy prices, and thoughts and concerns now about those and the impact on inflation, as we're already paying a whole lot for a lot of stuff here in Nova Scotia.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. The cost, certainly, of doing business is something that our members are constantly keeping an eye on. And we hear from our members, and we share that feedback with our government partners, that we need to continue to make the business environment in our province as attractive and as welcoming as possible, and work together to keep our taxes low, to keep our regulation low. And that feedback that we get from our members, we share that and consolidate that and present that to our government partners who that helps inform their policy development. But you're right, it's a very, very disruptive, volatile, uncertain world. And because Nova Scotia is so connected to that global economy, that's affecting us. That's affecting us here. So I would encourage all of our listeners right now to think about that when they're thinking about making their purchases and taking advantage of the tremendous business community and not-for-profit community we have locally, and really make their decisions to help our local economy grow and prosper.
That leads me to my next question, Don. We know that there is an affordability crisis here in Nova Scotia. We know that the cost of living is extremely high. Is it difficult from a chamber perspective to try and recruit new people to come to Nova Scotia to start businesses?
Well, certainly affordability is an issue that, again, we're hearing from our members. In fact, our conversations with our members are telling us that the human capital recruitment of bringing people to Nova Scotia is increasingly a topic in terms of affordability. That's something that we're hearing right across the country. So I think as the world changes and as we continue to recognize that we as a country need to find new trading partners, we need to find new ways to diversify our economy, because affordability, one of the ways to address affordability is to help businesses be more productive, and through more productivity, allow our businesses to be able to attract a great talent by creating the work conditions that people are finding attractive to come to. So that's definitely a topic that we sit down with our members and talk about quite a bit, Dan. Yes.
Don, you're in a unique position to answer this next question. As the chamber, as the entity that is the chamber, how close is the relationship with the post-secondary institutions in our city? We're lucky to have lots of universities and NSCC kicking around here, and using them as a tool to recruit people to come and start up business in Halifax.
No doubt about it. Look, we are blessed, quite frankly, in Halifax with 6 world-class universities, the community college, which I was a proud member of for all those years. And we've built an international reputation and a provincial reputation that, again, I would say we're best in class. The business community knows that. The business community, I've seen firsthand, has worked very closely with our post-secondary sector in terms of human capital development, in terms of research and applied research, and knowing the persona of our universities and the Nova Scotia Community College, the desire, Dan, to create an even closer relationship to help ensure that those tremendous assets are there to help build the economy, to ensure that they have the workforce, to ensure they have the innovation to compete in the economy of tomorrow. Yes.
Premier has been pretty bullish on his thoughts on changing the economy here in Nova Scotia and moving more to natural resources, to wind generation, to jobs like that. Do we have the skilled labor here now in order to facilitate that?
Yeah, you're absolutely great. Such a great question. And what we're finding is our post-secondary institutions, as I mentioned earlier, are transitioning. As the economy changes, the level of training changes, the type of training changes. And I've seen in my career in post-secondary over the past 25 years an increased nimbleness, Dan, the ability to be responsive to the emerging changes of the economy. And our post-secondary institutions, I mean this when I say it, I have great faith in their ability to step up, as they always have, and be able to help build that human resource that we need as a province to, again, to compete.
Last question, Don, and this one's pretty fresh. City Council is looking to get rid of free parking on Saturdays in the downtown core areas. I would imagine that some of your members will be not very happy with that decision.
Yeah, we heard that the past couple of days, and again, we'll be working with our members. Again, over 2,000 members are such a tremendous resource, not only for the economic value that they bring, but also for the ability to consult with our members, to hear their feedback, and again, provide that feedback to our government partners, not only provincially, but also municipally and federally. And, we consolidate that feedback, we present it, and we help, and we're confident that will help inform their policy development going forward. So those types of decisions, we know they're difficult, and we'll provide the appropriate feedback based on what our members feel how it's going to impact their businesses.
Don, congratulations on the new position, and I'm sure we're going to talk soon.
Look forward to it, Dan. Thank you always for your interest in the Halifax Chamber of Commerce, and you have a wonderful day.
Thank you, sir. That's Don Bureaux. He is the new CEO of the Halifax Chamber of Commerce, shifting over there from his former job as the head of NSCC. Time for us to take a break. When we come back, the show continues. After the update, Blake's going to give us the news, and then it's been a while. And I'm looking forward to our conversation with former CTV anchor and a friend of our program. That is Steve Murphy. He'll be here for the next little bit to discuss world events, and we'll get his take on things as he continues his time away in the Caribbean. Anyway, Steve keeps his eye and his finger on the pulse of what's going on in our part of the world, and I look forward to his commentary on some of the big issues of the day. Steve Murphy will be your guest when we return. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Back after the news. Back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Bombs falling in the Middle East. The streets in Halifax filled with protesters. A crackdown on cannabis. Clock springing forward. Lots of issues before our leaders and us here in Nova Scotia. It's time for a little logic. And for that, of course, we reach out to our good friend Steve Murphy. How are you?
I'm doing well, Dan. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm okay. We've
been put a lot of pressure on me when you reduce this to logic. I know the segment is called Murphy's Logic, but right. As I say when I speak to organizations, it's logic if you agree with it, and maybe it's just BS if you don't. But
Fair
it is
enough.
The way I see things.
It is,
yeah.
and Steve, I know that you are living somewhere right now where it's warm, and we're not dealing with snow and melting and those kind of things. But I know that you keep your eyes on what's going on here at home and of course internationally with all of the business in the Middle East. And I guess we'll start there. Your thoughts on the war in Iran and the carnage that we're seeing, at least thus far.
Well, I mean, carnage is always reprehensible and always deeply regrettable. And we should never forget we're talking about the loss of life.
Right.
And sometimes it's easy, I think, when we villainize our opponents particularly, or perhaps even especially in times of war. It's easy to dehumanize them. I don't want to ever do that. Having said that, no democratically elected leader can ever possibly speak for everyone in her or his country. But I do think that the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, has been speaking for quite a few Canadians, many Canadians, when he says that he and the government supports the idea of ending the repressive theocracy in Iran and the terrorism that it has fostered. And then he says, it may be a commendable goal, but regrettably, it may be being done the wrong way without the international support that one would like to see. There's no coalition of the willing here. It's possibly, quite likely, technically at least, a violation of international law. And it is being done by the United States of America, whose current leader has demonstrated a willingness to breach international law, international conventions, and the world order in many other situations and cases, and is now moving on Iran with clearly no congressional mandate, and that's a whole other issue, and he's not the first to do it, nor will I suspect he'd be the last. But there is no real clarity yet from President Trump or his cabinet officials as to what the end game here looks like. What does the next day or the day after in Iran look like? And we've heard Marco Rubio say such things as, the goal is not regime change, but we wouldn't object if the regime changed.
Right.
And then we hear the president talking about taking out the military infrastructure of the country. But one has the sense, and perhaps I'm giving into my skepticism or cynicism as I age, one gets the deep sense that oil is always a factor in many of Mr. Trump's international interventions. So certainly the case in Venezuela, and I think it's also the case in this instance. So, is it the classic case of perhaps it's the right goal, but it's being done for the wrong reason, or maybe by the wrong people? But I think that Canadians are conflicted in the way the Prime Minister has largely articulated.
Steve, do you think that Mark Carney is dancing on a razor's edge here when it comes to what his thoughts are and what he believes Canadians' thoughts are with this war? Because we know that wars are unpopular. We know that we have seen Canadians' loss of life in other conflicts in recent years, particularly in Afghanistan. We know
sure he is.
Right, and then he yesterday was asked if Canadians were to be involved, and he took what I consider to be a very political stance on it. He said, not at this point. I'm paraphrasing, of course, not at this point, but we're not closing the door on that. So, is that because of the elephant in the room?
Oh, no, I would challenge you in that for a couple of reasons. One, I think that the Prime Minister has accurately stated what is Canada's commitment under NATO Article 5.
Right.
NATO, we are a part of NATO, and one of our commitments is that an attack on one is an attack on all. And I think the Prime Minister is perhaps regrettably right. If, in fact, a NATO ally is attacked, then we have a treaty obligation, and I would say a moral obligation, to provide whatever assistance we possibly can. The most recent example of that, of course, was when the United States of America was attacked on 9/11.
Correct.
And we did respond. That was an attack on an ally. We came very close to having a missile land in Turkey.
Yes.
And for whatever our political differences with Turkey, Turkey is a NATO ally. So I think the Prime Minister is being accurate. Is it a political statement? Well, sure. There's always the taint of politics, but I think in this case, he's accurate. One other thing, Dan. Not only is the Prime Minister dancing on the head of the proverbial pin for the reasons you've said, which is the commitment to war and the idea of our people being on the ground is a harrowing idea. But, Mr. Carney has to be very careful now with everything he says because he is on Donald Trump's radar. Many American presidents blithely ignored the sayings or the utterances of Canadian prime ministers over the years because they thought we weren't very important. But Carney has the world's attention.
He does.
Carney, with the speech in Davos and now his recent remarks in Australia, is emerging as the voice of the second powers, if we can call them that. And
the middle powers, I think they call them, right?
The middle powers, yes,
yeah.
Or the second powers. And Carney is emerging as the voice for that group. There are some dissenters, of course. Prime Minister Starmer in Great Britain doesn't see it Carney's way. Many other leaders do. So Carney is now on Trump's radar. And I think that Mr. Carney's initial response to the attack by the United States and the State of Israel on Iran had to take that into account. Because we know that Mr. Trump's reaction to things is not always well, perhaps it's not usually rational.
Right.
And we don't want to do anything more to provoke an already angry bear. And this bear is perpetually angry. So I think Mr. Carney is walking a fine line in that respect as well.
We've seen the results of that a couple of times since this operation was launched in Iran, right? When the UK refused to engage, he called out their special relationship. We've seen the Spain not allow U.S. fighter jets to use their bases. He's talking about raising tariffs. So it really is a dance, isn't it?
Well, it is, and let's not forget that in the final analysis, Mr. Trump said, well, we don't need Spain, but on the other hand, if we wanted to use their bases, we'll just fly in and use them. So I think you know what President Trump thinks, and that is, we're going to do what we want, I'm going to do what I want, irrespective of what you think, and that is his approach to government.
Steve, obviously this story is dominating all of the media here in Canada and in the United States. You're in another country. What's the coverage been like of it down where you are?
Well, again, I follow Spanish media in this country. My Spanish isn't completely fluent. It certainly gets attention. It's not a subject that I hear everyday residents of the Dominican Republic where I'm living at the moment. It's not something I hear them talking about, but my suspicion is that they do. Certainly the expats who are here, and there are many Canadians here, many Americans, some Europeans. It's a very big subject among all of us. I'm not really able to tell you with any certainty how big a story it is here in Spanish media, but I know it is covered, and clearly this is a country, the Dominican Republic, which is not very far away from us, politically and geographically. Certainly, it's part of the North American sphere. So I think the Dominicans pay very close attention to what the United States is doing at all times.
Steve, to closer to home politics here, of course, we had the blizzard budget last week, as it's been called. It was delivered in the teeth of a snowstorm, which was probably maybe a harbinger of bad news for what the reaction to the budget was going to be. We had thousands of people on the streets in front of Province House yesterday. I liken it to maybe when the film credit was axed and we saw the pushback on that. There's a lot of upset people about this budget.
Did you coin that term, blizzard budget, by the way?
Actually, I think that was Claudia Chender, but I'll give her credit for it.
All right. Well, it's a very clever term, and it was a blizzard for any number of reasons. I mean, there was a blizzard, cuts came. Some people would say it was a snow job. There are so many metaphors here that I should probably stop while I'm ahead. Listen, Dan, I have to tell you something. As you know, I'm a regular listener to this program, and I always pay particular heed to the open hour. So I've been detecting since the budget, and really over the past couple of months, what I consider to be a very fascinating case study that is now underway in Nova Scotia and really underway on the Veinotte show. And let me posit it this way. We hear regularly on the one hand about a city government that is attempting to maintain and expand services and is raising taxes to do so and being criticized for it.
Correct.
And on the other hand, we have a provincial government which has cut taxes, spent itself into debt, and is now cutting programs and is being criticized for it. So I want to know how we're going to square this circle. I mean, nobody wants to see their program cut. And I'll be very honest about it. As somebody who has affiliations in the arts and culture industry, I have very strong feelings about the cuts that are being made for personal reasons. I have very strong feelings about cuts to programs that are supporting communities that badly need and deserve support. I have very strong feelings about programs that are being cut, that are delivering aid on a very personal level, on a very small scale in terms of dollars and cents, that tend to be low-hanging fruit for governments to pick. But on the other hand, Dan, don't we as the taxpayers, and as you often say, and Todd said, and Rick Howe said, and as I've said, there's only one taxpayer.
Right.
And we're all paying for all of this. And I think it's now time for us as taxpayers, and it begins with what we have to do individually, but we have to ask ourselves where we want the balance to be. Where are the priorities? What do we want our governments to do? But more importantly, what are we willing to pay to have them do it? And what are we willing to give up if we don't want to pay more? And it does seem to be right at the moment. We're telling the city not to raise taxes, and we're telling the province not to cut services. But I don't know how you square those circles, because you can't have everything you want, particularly if you're not willing or able to pay for it.
It's an interesting discussion point. Steve, we're going to take a break. Steve's going to stick around for us right up until the top of the hour. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We are back in minutes. Welcome back to the Friday Eve edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand, and on the phone with us this hour is, or this half hour anyway, is our good friend Steve Murphy, who is taking some time out of his regular routine of sitting on his deck and enjoying coffee and looking out over the warmth of the Dominican Republic to spend some time with us, and I do appreciate that, sir.
I do believe you coined Friday Eve. I think that's a Dan Ahlstrandism, isn't it?
Well, I'll take credit for that one. How's that?
But Dan, listen, just before we get off the subject of the provincial budget, there was another quick point I wanted to toss out there.
Sure.
Governments can cut a lot of things. I mean, governments can cut virtually any program they want, but the provincial government of Nova Scotia, no government can cut the debt service charge. We have to pay our interest on our debt, because if we don't, then we will fall into default. Our interest rates will go up and we'll essentially bankrupt ourselves over time. Do you know, and I believe I've heard you quote these figures on the program, the charge on the Nova Scotia debt is approaching $1 billion.
$1 billion with a B.
In a province of 1 million people, that means $1,000 per head. So ask yourself this. Of all the money you pay to the province of Nova Scotia as a taxpayer, and I as a taxpayer are paying, how much of that is going to the debt service before it can go to anything else?
Yep, that's
assuming
before
everybody in the province, every man, woman, and child in the province pays taxes. It's $1,000 per person before we spend a penny on anything else. That's why the debt is a problem, and that's why the debt has got to be dealt with in a meaningful way. When I look back on Mr. Houston's promise and then his action to reduce the HST, and I cautioned against it at the time, I think it is now clearly it was a mistake. It was a mistake for a government that knew it was deep in debt. And Tim Houston is a fellow of the Chartered Accountancy of Nova Scotia. He's an expert in this field. When you know you're deep in debt, that is no time to cut revenue. That was a mistake, and we're now deeply and richly paying for it.
It's that and the bridge tolls, which is indications are about $40 million a year. Where we saw
and that was political. There was no public impetus to do that whatsoever.
Right. I didn't hear a lot of people calling. A lot of people. Nobody likes paying a toll, but there wasn't people in the streets talking about it. We also heard.
Let me add though, Dad. Nobody wants to pay anything, but
right.
As long as we're going to have these expectations of government, federal, provincial, and municipal, we have to acknowledge that we're going to pay, and it's only a question of how and how much we're willing to pay before we say enough. And it does seem to me, again, I cite that apparent contradiction between a municipal government being criticized for raising taxes to maintain service and a provincial government that's now being criticized for cutting programs to try to do something about the shortfall. Again, those two concepts are in complete opposition one to the other.
We also heard from Stats Canada at the end of last year, Steve, that Nova Scotia saw a net decline in its population. So the tax
Correct.
base is starting to level off as well. So we're heading into even tougher economic times.
Possibly so, but I think we also need to take a look at the fact that population growth is something that had a tremendous benefit on not only the province, but on the region. Was
Right.
it managed perfectly? Clearly not. But it did take a long time for us as a region to realize the importance of population growth, and then through the Atlantic Population Pilot, do something to actually grow our population. We did get out of whack with it. There's no question about that. But now the pendulum has swung very far in the other direction, and we see that we're paying the price for population decline. Nowhere is it more evident on the campuses, where we've lost international students who were paying considerably more than our domestic students to attend these universities and colleges, and now they're suffering. I like to defend the universities because in addition to being the centers of higher learning, which they are, and academic research of tremendous value, which they are, they're also economic engines in our community. Look at where Halifax would be, the Halifax metropolitan area, without our universities. These are economic engines in the community. So, they need to be respected on that level as well. And that's not to say that we should get in line to give them huge handouts, but I think we need to realize that what is good for the campuses and the universities is generally good for our economy.
Conversation earlier this week, Steve, with the Minister of Justice here in Nova Scotia, Scott Armstrong, in the studio defending his decision to crack down on illegal cannabis dispensaries across Nova Scotia. The Mi'kmaq community is not very happy with it. In fact, I saw a piece last night on the Suppertime News Hour that some of the communities are blocking access to RCMP entering their lands.
Yes, I heard that. I heard the interview with the minister as well. Let me say this. I think that most people are opposed to things that are illegal, but I don't know that the courts have made a final determination as to whether dispensaries on the lands of our Indigenous people, of the Indigenous peoples, are illegal. That is yet to be determined. We need to get some guidance from the courts on this. We need to have a clear understanding, a clear interpretation of whether Indigenous people have treaty rights to sell cannabis.
Finally, we're just about out of time, Steve. We're springing forward on the weekend. It's time for the time change again, and of course, when that happens, the debate comes. Should we join BC and just say enough is enough?
Yep.
Easy answer to that one.
I've been against the time change for a long time. I don't understand why we do it. We gripe about it. I don't know anybody who says, wow, the time is changing. Aren't you happy? Okay, sure, you can make the case, well, I'm going to get an extra hour of sleep. Don't kid yourself. You're losing the hour later. Yeah, right. Let's do away with the time change. But I think it would be helpful if we could get all of North America, or at least all of Canada, on the same page. Because what we don't want is a patchwork quilt of time zones, that look like a patchwork quilt. I think we need some coherent public policy on this. To me, the time change, it no longer makes sense, if it ever did. And there's all kinds of medical research to back that up.
Circadian rhythms, apparently, is what it messes with.
Oh, there's a $2 word to end the conversation.
There you go. Yeah, Steve, as always, my friend.
It's true, the circadian rhythm, yeah.
I appreciate the time. I know that you have a busy schedule where you are now, and carving out a half hour carving out a half hour for us is much appreciated. Looking forward to seeing you when you return to Halifax. I
want to shout out to our friend Todd Veinotte, and I hope he's doing well.
Same shout out for me, Steve. I appreciate it.
You got it.
That is Steve Murphy, of course, CTV anchor, and has his editorial, Murphy's Logic, that you'll see when he comes back and joins our program from time to time to share his perspective on the events. It's interesting to listen to somebody outside of the regular circle, right? And Steve raises a very interesting point. We've been taking HRM Council to task pretty hard here on this program for not making decisions to cut things, and the province has made decisions to cut things, and we're taking them pretty hard to task. I think Steve doesn't miss that point, and I think that it's an interesting discussion topic. Might be something that you want to join the show and discuss, and we're going to do that right after the news here at the top of the hour. I am curious as to your thoughts. Of course, it's the open hour, and regular rules apply. You can bring your opinion, your thoughts to the table, no matter what they are. But the Prime Minister yesterday said during his time in Australia that when asked if Canadians are to be involved in the conflict, the war in Iran, and said one can never categorically rule out participation. Canada will stand by its allies when it makes sense. My question to you folks is a pretty easy one. Should Canada get involved in military operations in the Middle East? 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. The open hour after the news. All right, welcome back as we roll along here on a Thursday, or as sounds better, as Friday Eve edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. It's time for the open hour. The lines are open, folks. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Certainly lots to talk about, and certainly a lot of interesting points raised. Always interesting points raised when we sit down with our friend Steve Murphy, who is listening from afar and maybe gives us a little bit of a I don't know if sober second thought is the right way to describe it, but a different perspective on the financial situation here in Nova Scotia, particularly in HRM. His point is, is that we're criticizing HRM Council for not cutting enough, yet we're criticizing the provincial government for cutting too much, or at least cutting things in the wrong area. It's an interesting perspective, isn't it? 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Prime Minister Mark Carney continuing his travels to Australia and I believe speaking before the Australian Parliament. I was asked by a reporter yesterday about the potential for Canadian involvement in the war in Iran. We've been told by officials here in Canada that there has been no Canadian involvement to this point. Some questioning that, given the interlocking training that happens between Canadian and American soldiers and sailors and airmen, and these missions that they're on, particularly in areas like NORAD and such. But the Canadian government's official position is that there has been no Canadian involvement to this point in the military operations in the war in Iran. Prime Minister asked yesterday if there would be, or if they are considering, and he said we can't completely rule out Canadian involvement in the war in Iran, and that we will defend our allies when it makes sense. And I think Steve's point that, Canada being a member of NATO and Article 5 of NATO, when you attack on one is attack on all, is kind of where he's at. But he certainly didn't close the door yesterday. And I'm wondering what you think about Canadians being involved militarily in the war in Iran. And Council has passed a 25% increase. Speaking of cuts and increases, City Council has passed a 25% increase in parking rates in some of the downtown areas, 25%, and is also moving to eliminate free parking on Saturdays. First hour will be free, and I don't know how the logistics of that are going to work. I'm sure it'll all come out in the days and weeks ahead. But free parking essentially now in downtown Halifax and other areas has been eliminated. I want to hear your thoughts on that. Or whatever else is on your mind. That's the beauty of the open hour. Let's go right to the phones. And we say hello to Ed. Ed, how are you?
Good morning. I'm fine, thank you. In general, I agree with the Houston government's cuts that they're making.
Okay.
We are a debtor province in a debtor country, and we can't keep going down this road. It's impossible.
Okay.
And I disagree with Mr. Murphy. I don't think it really involves population. The more population you have, the more schools you need, the more doctors you need, the more hospitals you need. I think it has to do with more about politicians giving out goodies to get themselves put back into office the next election. And one of the things maybe we could stop doing is building these huge highway systems out, which we don't take proper care of. That is a large part of our tax money. I think just goes towards that.
So I'm just curious about your highway comment, Ed. You don't think that the highway system that we have is needed?
I didn't say all of it.
Okay.
The size of it. I would almost bet that Nova Scotia, for its size, per area, has more road and highway systems than any other province in the country.
Right. So we have too many of them, is what you're saying.
As we see, they're not properly maintained. You could lose a small bus in some of the potholes. For sure. Exaggeration, of course.
Right.
And the roads aren't properly upkept, and they cost a fortune. So maybe we could, if the road system were really looked at, if we stop building it out, just maintain what we've got now, maybe that would be a help in future budgets.
Interesting point, Ed. I appreciate it.
Okay, and the other thing I wanted to call about was LED headlights dealing with roads. I'm older. When I drive at night, I find them blinding. I can lose sight of the road in that for maybe a second and a half, which is enough to put you off the road, which is why I tend to drive less at night. I know you probably do a lot of driving in the dark by the time you come to work. You may not find it a problem, unless someone has the same problem I do coming the other way at you, of course. But I think the light spectrum that LED lights covers is dangerous, and I think they shouldn't be on headlights.
Great point, Ed. Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I think it's to Ed's point on the headlights, I experienced the same issue. Maybe it's because my eyes are getting a little older too, but it's not every LED. It's certain designs and certain models and makes of cars and the way that their lights are shaped and so on and so forth. But it is an interesting point, and it certainly raises a safety concern if Ed's, and I'm sure Ed's not alone of having that light affect his eyes. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Dave.
Yes, good morning, Dan. Let's not forget that Mark Carney has us involved in a Ukraine war by financing it to the tune of billions, $26 billion, armored vehicles, and Canadians training Ukrainians in Latvia and Poland.
Right.
So in some ways, we are tinkering with a war there. We just don't have boots on the ground. God help us if we do. Now, having said that with Iran, did you know, you're tiptoeing around political stuff. We have almost 1/3 Persian population, Iranian population in Canada, many of which are in Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal areas.
Okay.
And they've all been very productive, by the way. They left during the Islamic 1979 revolution and the Iran-Iraq wars, continued wars, and to escape systemic political repression and religious persecution and lack of freedoms. Now, to those listeners that aren't aware, Iran is diplomatically approving of Russia's ways and their moves, and have been providing Russia, I've done some research here, on Shahad.
Yeah, thousands and thousands and
UAVs,
thousands of them. Yep, drones.
These are sadly what's fighting wars now. You can't see these things, can't hear them. They're kamikaze.
Yep,
they can go right inside deep of Ukraine right now, and hitting populous areas, and without really any precision. I don't know what they're hitting, but people, populous areas and infrastructure. That is what Iran is doing. Now, they've also provided them with a tremendous amount of intelligence on how to build these things, which they're doing now, Russia themselves. They're cheap. So let's not forget that, folks. Maybe this is also another avenue to stopping the Russia war on Ukraine. I'm just trying to put things together here. There's a lot more that's going on that you and I will ever know. Also, when it comes to, this is interesting, when Mark Carney does order our submarines, hopefully they're half as good as what the U.S. has at the moment, because they just took down one of the flagships of Iran in the Indian Ocean.
Yeah, off of Sri Lanka.
Hiding. Yep, with a torpedo.
Yep.
Now, we haven't seen this since 1942, I think.
Well, that's what the Americans say. The British say that it happened during the Falklands War. But yes, I understand where you're coming from. Perhaps,
yeah. And if we get submarines, let's hope they're half as good as this. What we don't understand, too, and by the way, these U.S. nuclear submarines, they're all nuclear. They can stay underwater for 2 years, except they have to come up to surface to change staff a little bit and bring in food. But it could stay lurking in the seas undetected. You could be 50 miles offshore of anywhere, and they do carry nuclear-tipped missiles as well, whether they're Tomahawk or whatever, ballistic. And they can be fired at any one time. Right. I'm not a warmonger here, but I hope when Mark Carney invests our billions and billions and billions of dollars on these submarines, let's do it right and have something what the U.S. has now, where these are probably the most, Dan, you were in the military, they're probably the most powerful weapon on the planet, because you don't know where they are, and a missile can be fired at any one time if needed. And the world, there's probably several under the bottom of the ocean or in the ocean right now floating around, and nobody knows where they are. So I just want to say maybe people should look at a different avenue, like with the supporting of Russia, the war, and obviously the oil is going to come into play as well, folks. That's just the way it is. So
it already has.
Boots on the ground. Let's hope the boots on, and we've seen this in the Middle East so often. Gas goes up. How many times have we've lived long enough to see gas. And why are we getting Saudi oil and U.S. gas in the first place? That's the problem, right? If we had our own thing here, we could probably counter some of the increases here. But anyways, I'll let you go, Dan.
Thanks, Dave.
I've been hogging the phone long enough. Cheers.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255 to the sub. And I'm certainly not a submariner nor a former member of the Navy, and I stand to be corrected on this, but submarines have specific roles, I think, Dave, and I think that the roles for the submarine fleet in Canada, if I'm not mistaken, are to protect our sovereignty of the North. And I don't know if well, we know that these aren't going to be these nuclear powered missile carrying submarines, at least the designs that I've seen from the German bid and from the South Korean bid. I think that our subs are going to be used for coastal defense and for ensuring sovereignty in the North. But again, I stand to be corrected on that. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're back after the break. All right, welcome back. Open hour continues. There's some lines open, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Before we go to the phones and email, I'd like to read to you. It says, hey, Dan, I was in the city yesterday for an appointment and got a $45 parking ticket for a 20-minute visit. I couldn't get the stupid app working in time, and I wasn't going to be gone long. I have lots of quarters in my car. Would have cost me about a quarter. Now I'm out $45. I hate going into downtown Halifax. I never plan to go to the city unless I have to. And the last time I was there over 6 months ago, now no Saturday parking. Council is so messed up and has no budgeting skills. That comes to us via email. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let us say hello now to Greg. Greg, how are you?
How you doing, my friend?
Good. It's on your mind.
I was in the Navy, by the way, and the submarines, they have a lot of other things that they do.
Right.
Okay, there's a lot of other things they used to do, and it
takes a special person to live on one of those things. I took a tour of one at one point, and I got claustrophobic immediately.
Yeah. Well, I was on one, and let me tell you, it wasn't fun, but what the heck, eh? We survived.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate that, Greg. What's on your mind?
Anyway, the budget. I mean, everybody's upset with the Houston government's done, but look what BC did out west. They just recently put their budget, okay, and the cutting and the slashing that they did.
Right.
And stuff that they did. Every province across this country are in the same boat we're in. Deficits, ballooning, and debt, and all this other stuff, and they have to deal with it. And you've got to do something. It's either you're damned if you do or you're damned if you don't.
Right.
And unfortunately, do we start cutting money from healthcare? No, God forbid. Or take money from the social service thing that they have and, community services? No. So what's next? I hate to say this, but I'd rather see them cut that than cut money from healthcare or services that we need and that sort of thing. Just saying, you got to do something, and you can't wait until it's too late. And unfortunately,
some will say we're already there, Greg, right?
Yeah, I know, but we're living in times when drastic measures, I guess you have to say. I hear you. We get a credit rating from Moody's credit rating, right? Well, right. If that dipped below, good luck trying to borrow money. It costs a lot more money.
Cost a lot more for sure. Yep.
So I'm just saying, we elect these people to do a job for us, to manage the finances and make things run. Well, when they do it, then people get all up in arms and yell. And if they don't, well, Anyway, that's all I got to say, my friend.
Appreciate it, Greg. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Len.
Oh, good morning, Dan. And I'd just like to reiterate what that last man said about the cuts. We have to make cuts. If you were in business, and I was in business for many years, and I know that when I have things that are really, let's say, wasting money on a lot of things that are not being used, then I'm going to cut it out. And people shouldn't complain about the government having to make cuts. I don't believe cuts should be made that have to do with the health care, but a lot of things. Now, I can remember, for example, just one item. Now, all the money that they give to the Aboriginals or whoever they give it to, a lot of that money, if you recall, in the past was wasted. the chief, remember the chief a few years back was confiscating up most of the money for himself or herself.
You've got to be careful painting an entire group of people with one brush, Len.
No, but I'm just saying.
Well, no, you are saying that, and I would suggest that, take a look at the Millbrook First Nation and how much that First Nation has improved itself and has become an economic hub in that part of the world.
Well, let me explain something to you, Dan. Just for one example, when I was in business, I had some Aboriginals come into my store that we used to purchase stuff with the money that they had from the government.
Right.
And I said to them, "What do you do with the money that you had from last year?" And they said, "Well, we still got a lot of it left, but if we don't spend the money that we've got right now that we have, then they won't give us any more money." So they said, "We got to spend it no matter what we do with it." Now, what a waste. I said to myself, what a waste of money. They're coming in to spend money because they have to spend it in order to get the grant again for this year.
Did you take the money, Len, when they spent it? Did you take it?
Well, I mean, if they wanted to buy items, I was in business, and I was selling stuff. And what could I do if they want to buy? I can't say, no, I'm not going to sell you anything. But I'm just saying to show you the waste that sometimes is made by giving grants. But anyway, grants, a lot of them, they have to be cut in order to save money for the important things. So I don't think people should complain about all the cuts that the government has to make. The other thing is with the war in Iran, we in Canada don't need to get involved in that. There's enough allies already fighting that war, which makes me very annoyed when I hear about over 100 children being killed in a school in Iran that the bombs hit. Yep. All these innocent people that are getting killed. There's probably now about 2,000 people that have been killed in this particular the Iranian war. Why? What is coming out of this in the end? Absolutely nothing. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Len. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. And just for the sake of clarity, Indigenous communities, that the money that he's talking about comes from the federal government. It doesn't come from the provincial government. But I understand your concern and, quite frankly, don't agree with you with it, Len. But that's the beauty of the open hour, is that we can share opinions and we don't have to necessarily agree with them, but we have the ability to do so. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're going to take a break. The open hour continues on the other side of the newscast. You are listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back. This is the Thursday edition of the Open Hour. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. There's certainly a lot of things to discuss out there between the ongoing escalation, as I just literally was in the newsroom, and the headlines flashing across the television screen is that the Iran war continues to escalate and gets bigger. Mark Carney saying yesterday that there's no Canadian involvement at this point, but didn't close the door into Canadian involvement in the future, saying that we'd be there to support our allies if it makes sense, which I think you can read into that being our commitments to NATO and into Article 5, right? That's if attack on one's attack on all, and we know there are some NATO countries in that region, so maybe he's hedging his bets that that won't happen and there will be no Canadian involvement. I've asked the question today, should there be Canadian involvement in the war in Iran? Might be something you want to talk about. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Barry.
I think that attack on one is attack on all. By the way, Iran didn't attack Israel, did not attack the states. They were attacked. And every country has a right to defend itself. So where did they do evil? I mean, I know the regime is horrible and everything else, but and Trump was also told by his military advisors that this was not a bright idea. He did it anyway.
Right.
So why should we get in and cause lives because of a man's stupidity? I mean, when Spain wouldn't let them use their landing fields, he said, we could put them there anyway. What could they do about it?
Yeah.
Is that the way you talk to a sovereign country? This is a madman, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's an ally for sure. Yep.
And like I said, this is not good. I mean, this could build up into a world war. And that's scary. Hey, I'm near the end of my life. It doesn't hurt. But I have children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren.
Right.
I don't want to see them get hurt because of this stupidity.
Thanks, Barry. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-825. To Barry's first point, that Iran has certainly been an aggressor for many years. We've seen Iranian attacks on Israel in the past. We've seen Iranian attacks on its Gulf neighbors before this. Do you remember the telegraphed attack after, what was it, Midnight Hammer, when they launched their missiles at Doha? We've seen them sponsor terrorism around the world. The Houthis come to mind when it comes to that. So Iran isn't an innocent partner in this by any means, to Barry's point. And but that being said, this latest incarnation of violence in the Middle East certainly was started by Israel and by the United States. And Barry's right. A nation has the right to defend itself, regardless of what we think of the regime or not. Let's go back to the phones and say hello to William. William, how are you?
Oh, good day. How are you?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
Oh, I'm not trying to, make recommendations where the Houston government should be cutting their money and stuff like that. But when Ed called and suggested that the twinning of the highway should stop at the city limits and it's unnecessary and stuff like that, I mean, you had to take offense to that comment because, there's nothing that builds the economy more than twinning the highways and, making the province smaller. I mean, everywhere where you twin highways, it's going to have an economic impact. And then also the jobs that come with building it are important to the economy as well, and they're good paying jobs, obviously. And, the other comment that he said that we have more highways for a province this size than anybody else, which is not true. New Brunswick has way more kilometers. Manitoba and Saskatchewan have more kilometers. So, we got a long way to go to catch up to the other provinces. And, tourism is either one or two as far as the number one industry in this province. So, connecting the province so our tourists can get to the locations and spend their money is got to be important. And then the sad thing about it is that, he closed all those museums and stuff like that. So, I mean, in terms of what other choices do you have? I don't know, but I think it's sad that we are targeting our number one or two industry when we made those cuts.
Thanks for the call, William. Appreciate it, sir. Have a good one. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. One of the points that William didn't touch on when it comes to twinning highways is the safety factor, right? We know the ongoing twinning process that's happening right now on Highway 103 that is working its way through Hubbards and towards the South Shore is a direct result of safety issues. We know that twinning the 104 in areas is the result of an increase of fatalities on those highways, right? But to our first caller, Ed's point, it's almost obscenely expensive to build roads, right? It's an incredibly costly endeavor to build roads. And then to his follow-up point to that, then we have to maintain them. And anybody that's been driving around on a 100 series of highways here in Nova Scotia know that maybe we're not doing the best of jobs of that. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Bob.
Hi, Dan. I just want to speak on Iran for a second.
Sure.
Before, in 2015, Iran signed the JCPOA. It's the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action for the Iran nuclear deal, where they agreed on not having nuclear weapons.
Right.
And Trump tore it up 2018 so they could put more sanctions on them.
Right.
And they signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which Israel has not. And it just seems like it's the reason why they went, but they just they just destroyed the reason why they didn't want a nuclear bomb. Like the Ayatollah was the only reason for them not to have nuclear weapons. He put a fatwa in where it was like a religious condemnation saying we will never have nuclear weapons. And they took out the one guy that kept them from doing that. So this actually gives them more reason to have them.
Right.
When you look at it.
That being said, Bob, you know, the Iranian government, be it from the Ayatollah or down to the president, have not been shy by saying that their mortal enemy is Israel and death to the United States, and have threatened to wipe both of them off the planet.
Yeah, and you kind of see why America backed Saddam Hussein when the Iraqis went in and gave him chemical precursors that killed out like 300,000 people. Like that was on America.
Yeah, it always comes back to something else, right? That's the problem with conflicts, is that they really never resolve anything.
No, it's crazy. It's there needs to be greater heads that prevail into this situation. That's for sure.
Appreciate it, Bob.
Thanks.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. And that is the number if you want to join the conversation. Again, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. This email comes to us from Rob, and it reads, "You can applaud the removal of the murderous Iranian leadership and also recognize that the attack was clearly illegal under international law since there was no immediate threat. The fact U.S. presidents have taken action without a declaration of war many times since World War II doesn't make it any more legal. Carney's show of support for this action is problematic. If he also makes speeches, as he's done repeatedly, supporting the importance of adherence to international law, this is a strategic error on his part and will come back to haunt him. The fact that his government has begun walking back this support is indicative of that his wording was a mistake." And that one comes to us from Rob. When it comes to the provincial budget, Lee writes, "Tim Houston could easily turn down the heat by pledging to reduce the amount of MLAs in the next election. The government has the power to do this, but not the will. It really is a bad look adding bureaucratic bloat at a time when we're asked and expected to get by with less." And that comes to us from Lee. Open Hour continues after the break. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We are back in minutes. Something we haven't talked about here on the Open Hour, and tomorrow may be an opportunity to do that when we do this again. Of course, it will be the Friday Free-for-All, your chance to talk about whatever it is on your mind to wrap up the work week. We're springing forward on Saturday night into Sunday morning, right? We're doing the twice-a-year biannual time change, the moving of the clocks, the shifting of the daylight hours, and the ridiculous reasoning that we have behind it, that it's to help the farmers. Well, I'll tell you, folks, that farmers will get up in the dark and go to bed in the dark if they need to get the work done, right? I don't think that an hour ahead or an hour behind is going to change things for them, right? It's I've not really come across a really great reason why we change our clocks. I will say, during the morning commute when I'm driving in at 7:30 and it's a bright blue sunny day, which we hope to see an awful lot of in the spring, right, as we start to see the melt, that the sun is in my eyes, and moving that clock back will move that around, right? In fact, it won't be a problem anymore. You'll get more daylight in the evening hours. I think that's what most people look forward to, particularly in the spring, right? You'll get a chance to go out and enjoy your backyard or out for a walk or whatever it is you do, perhaps after supper hour, because the sun will stay up longer, or at least it will be light longer. It's not staying up any longer. It's just shifting the actual daylight hours over. But it does mess with a lot of people. There are some people here at this radio station that will tell you this spring forward edition of the time change is life-changing, at least for the first couple of days. It feels like you're losing that hour and you just can't make it up. And for what? BC is doing away with it. I think Saskatchewan has done away with it for years. I know there are individual jurisdictions. There's a small town in Ontario, in northern Ontario, it's called Advocacy, that has done away with it. But the province of British Columbia is going to change their clocks on Sunday, and then that's it. The time change, circadian rhythms, right? It's tough, and again, I go back to young families who have kids, and when it's still light outside, and you're trying to get your kids to bed, right? I know these are all not huge issues, but it just feels like it's an exercise that we do that really, not to mention those of you like me who can't figure out the digital clocks, and you stay at one time the rest of the year anyway, right? I know your phone and your watch do that automatically now, but the microwave and the stove don't. I almost said VCR, but that would be really aging myself, wouldn't it? 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. This just in, by the way, from police. If you're in the Dartmouth area, there's a heavy police activity, I guess you can call it, near Wright Avenue and Garland Avenue. There's an injured man in that area, apparently, and a heavy police presence, according to HRP, in the Dartmouth area, happening just a few moments ago. So if you're traveling and your route involves Wright Avenue near the area of Garland, you might want to take a secondary look at a route, because it looks like it's going to be tied up there for some time. Let's go back to the phones and say hello to George. George, how are you?
Good, sir. Thank you for taking my phone call.
What's on your mind?
Well, very quickly about this time change. Why do people want to go on standard time when we're on it 3.5 months out of the year?
Right.
We're on daylight saving time 8.5 months out of the year. British Columbia is already ready to move, and it's absolutely ridiculous to go back to standard time. We work outdoors, and believe me, when we lose that extra hour in the fall, it makes a big difference to what we're able to do and what we're not able to do. And I think it's absolutely ridiculous to change it. I think we should stay in daylight saving time all year long. Anybody who works in an office all day and they want to go out and play golf at night, basically, as time goes on, they can only play 9 holes of golf instead of 18, whereas if we're in daylight saving time, they can play 18 holes of golf. Anybody who travels any distance to work, it's dark in the morning when they go in daylight saving time, but it's light when they come home.
For sure.
Because there's light until 6 o'clock at night. If you're on standard time, it's dark when they go to work in the morning, and it's dark when they come home. And that's why you have more accidents.
You got it.
And Steve Murphy was right on the ball this morning when he said that we're ridiculous. We should stay in daylight saving time all year round.
Thanks, George.
I mean, I just can't see. It doesn't make any sense when we're on one time for 8.5 months and the other for 3.5, and we want to go to one that lasts 3.5 months instead of 8.5.
I totally agree with you, George. Thank you for calling.
All right, sir. You have a good day. Thanks for taking my phone call.
You
Take
too.
care. You're doing a good job.
I appreciate that, sir. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Josh writes, "Hey, Dan, I personally like the time change. I start early mornings, and working in the dark hours suck." Can't argue that point. Dan, it's not DST is not for farmers. It's a myth. The most recent iteration of DST is tied to war, actually called wartime. Do some Googling. I will have to do that. I don't understand how the time change has anything to do with war, but I will do my due diligence, Dan, and I'll take a look to see that. There's a million different theories as to why we do this. It's for the farmers. It's for the drive-in, the people, as George said, going golfing after work. Is there a good there is no good reason for it, right? Other than us changing our clocks twice a year. Let's just stay with one time and be done with it. I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the decisions that come out of British Columbia, but this one I certainly do. And I think that our leadership here in Nova Scotia should take note. I get it that there's a problem with us changing and other jurisdictions not. I know that the United States has time zones and such and so on, but my goodness, like really? Anyway. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Mark writes, people say it's very costly to twin highways. I say, what's a life worth? Highway, among others, here have taken hundreds of lives due to their design, and they're not up to 2026 standards. Thanks for the email. And Gino writes, heard it on News Report in the last 6 months or so that Nova Scotia has more roads than any other jurisdiction in North America, if you count the dirt ones. We have roads going all over the place, from here to there to everywhere. And all valid points, right? And I think that the politics of asphalt is a thing here. It's a thing in most jurisdictions, the politics of asphalt, of getting a new road built or a new road paved, some of those dirt roads you're talking about. And I think that those bring votes. And that's why I think we build a lot of roads outside of the twinning of the highways. I think, to me, the safety issue on the twinning of the highways is the biggest one. Having traveled Highway 103 for several years, it was time, right? The amount of traffic inbound on the 103 from down towards the South Shore into HRM has grown exponentially, and it was time. But you have to balance that with how much it costs. Building a road is extremely expensive. Let's go back to the phones and say hello to James. James, how are you?
Thank you for taking my call, as always. What's a life worth? What is a life worth? Insurance companies have long ago identified that more car crashes when we change the time. Thank you.
All right, appreciate it, James. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. It messes with it's called circadian rhythm, right? It's the way your body deals with daylight and rest hours, and there's a long, and we'll ask Rob about this on Tuesday, there's a long reason about why the time change. And it's not necessarily the fall time change that's the bad one. It's this one, right? You know, not to mention, the daylight, the sunshine, all of that stuff. And hey, I will say, don't forget about your pets, right? Your pet's stomach clock doesn't change, so you're going to get up an hour early anyway. Last word goes to Brian today. Brian, how are you?
Hello.
How are you?
Pretty good.
What's on your mind?
This thing about the daylight saving time. You know, the guy who started this was a Sir Sanford Fleming. He's the one about the Fleming Tower and the Dingle.
Yeah, the Dingle. You are correct.
And he did. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. Maybe about do with farming. Well, there was a lot more farming done back then in the 1850s, 1860s. I'm not sure exactly when this thing started, but near the end of the 1800s, anyway.
Right.
But I think it had to do with farming. I think not war, as far as I know. It was before the 20th century.
Okay.
So I don't know. That's all I know about it. But I know it was Sir Sanford Fleming.
All right, Brian, I appreciate that, sir.
Okay.
Have a good one. And thank you to all of you who picked up the phone, dialed the numbers, and joined the conversation. I truly appreciate it when you do that. We're going to stop. Blake is going to give us an update on what's going on in the news. And on the other side of it, we'll continue the show. We talked about it during the open hour. Paid parking on Saturdays will be a thing soon. A conversation with Downtown Paul MacKinnon from the Downtown Halifax Business Commission will be your guest. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back as we continue to watch the ongoing procedures and proceedings, I guess is the right word, down at City Hall as our city councilors go over their budget and look for ways to find some savings. One of the revenue-generating decisions that they've made this week was to accept a proposal that would see a 25% increase in parking rates and would see the end of free parking on Saturdays. And as this budget process was ongoing, and this proposal was brought before council in the first place, there was a lot of discussion about the impact that it will have on businesses. Is this yet another reason for people not to go downtown and to do their shopping? And when it comes to downtown Halifax, we go to Downtown Paul for his comments. That, of course, is Paul MacKinnon from the Downtown Halifax Business Commission. Paul, how are you?
Hey, Dan. I'm doing all right. Just kind of bracing myself for whatever the latest bad news will be coming out of our various budget proceedings that we're seeing at the City Hall and the province. But it's been a rough couple of days. I got to be honest.
But budgets are tough times, right? Because you never really know it's coming. Because both levels of government don't seem to like to communicate much.
Well, they're two very different processes. I think the provincial budget kind of gets done a bit in secret, and it kind of lands all at once. Whereas the city budget, it's kind of like this more painful daily discussion by councillors where they're making trades or coming up with ideas, sometimes out of nowhere. The parking thing is not out of nowhere. I mean, this is something that's brought up every year at budget time. It was brought up last year at budget time, and we weren't crazy about it then. We think it's a terrible idea. It's certainly not going to incentivize anyone to come downtown. But last year what happened was the city decided not to proceed with any increases or do parking on Saturday. But what they did do is they asked for a staff report, which actually would look at a couple of different things, ways that they could improve the parking system, and to also look into the possibility of creating a parking benefit district. And what that is, it's a concept that's used in lots of other cities where those revenues captured from parking in downtown areas are actually reinvested back into those areas. We've got a local example of that. The waterfront has done that for decades. It's one of the reasons why we've got so many great events and placemaking initiatives and things happening on the waterfront is all the parking revenue that's paid to the waterfront goes back into the waterfront. So we kind of like that idea, but a year later, we're still waiting for that staff report. So what has happened is council, I think, has jumped the gun and said, well, let's raise the rates anyway. Let's put paid parking on Saturday. And then a couple months from now, maybe 3 months, 4 months, who knows, we'll get a staff report which may support the decision we've made, or it may say it's not the right decision. It just seems backwards to me, Dan.
There was some discussion before the budget deliberations began, Paul, about putting dynamic pricing into place, right? Much like some of the ride-sharing companies have, that when their demand is up, then the prices increase. And there was a lot of discussion about some of that money that would be generated from that earmarked for downtown business commissions like yourself and like Spring Garden Road and like downtown Dartmouth.
That's right, and you know what? And no one likes paid parking. I mean, that's kind of a universal thing. But if the revenues are earmarked to improve the experience, I mean, parking revenues they're not a tax. They're a fee that's paid by the customers of downtown or Spring Garden or downtown Dartmouth. And so the idea of reinvesting that money helps ease the unpleasantness of paid parking, we think. On the dynamic pricing piece, we've actually already got that in HRM. So I think maybe council didn't quite understand that, but there's already, you will pay different rates at different times of the day. The nice thing is if you've got the parking app, you don't really see that. You come down, you pay with your app, you say, I want to park for 3 hours. It spits out the cost. You press your button, and away you go. It kind of removes the old style thing of having to look for coins and that type of thing. So that already exists. I mean, and those can always be tweaked as needed. But the big change really is another 25% increase on the rates. So that's 50% over the last couple of years. And the big change, of course, is the inclusion of Saturday paid parking. So if you think about if you're coming to a Mooseheads matinee game, that's an extra $5-10 you're going to have to be paying. If you're coming to the farmers market on Saturday, that's an extra $10 you're going to be paying for that visit as well. So yeah, we're not pleased with any of this. But I think fundamentally whether we can always argue about whether the price is right, whether the price should be adjusted. I think our biggest issue is that there's a whole report being worked on, which we're all going to be able to get some input into, which will help inform this decision. But that's all coming after the decision's already been made.
Paul, some of the arguments in support of this were that if we increase the rates or we have Saturday parking that's paid, that will motivate people to not stay in that spot as long, and we'd have turnover. Do you buy that argument?
Well, to a certain degree. I mean, turnover is important, but we could have great turnover if we charged $1,000 an hour for on-street parking. Then we'd have lots of
nobody would be down there.
No one. Yeah, so I mean, it's a balancing act. You want to maybe make some money, but the real purpose of having paid parking, it's really about regulated parking. So the reason that we have this in the first place in downtowns is because we've got 24,000 office workers. If they could come and just park on the street all day for free, they would do that, and there would be nowhere for customers to park. So you have to have some regulated parking. You even probably have to have some paid parking. So I think we all accept that. It exists in every downtown pretty much around the world. You've got to get the price right. But I'll tell you, and this is not the city's fault, but this is coming at the same time that the province has announced all these massive cuts to arts and culture. That's going to impact, events downtown. It's going to impact, arts and other things that are happening. So at the same time that we're having a harder time convincing people that there's all sorts of things happening downtown, we're also going to charge them a lot more to come here. So for the businesses, right, they're a single taxpayer. It feels a bit like a double whammy, one from the province, one from the city. And you know what? The budget season isn't over, so there certainly could be more unpleasant surprises to come.
Paul, we don't know. Well, the numbers from the city show about $1.3 million in revenue from these changes. None of that, as I understand it, is coming to you folks to help improve the downtown. It sounds like that's all going into general revenue.
Yeah, this has very clearly been positioned as nothing to do with improving parking or improving downtown business conditions or anything like that. It's really about, hey, we need to find some money. What do we make money on? We make money on parking. Let's jack that up a little bit, and so we can use those revenues for whatever. So yeah, there's no earmarking at all of any of the existing parking revenue, to say nothing about the increase that they've made. So yeah, that is really I would say of the issue. We don't like the increase, but that's probably the bigger issue, is that this isn't about trying to create a better parking system or reinvesting in the areas where people do pay for parking to make them better. It's really about, hey, we need a little bit more money. At the beginning of this budget process, and we noticed there's lots of fiscal constraints. The city is very highly dependent upon property taxes, and they want to break free of that cycle. The mayor's talked about this, councillors have talked about that. But it seems like all the moves that they've been making is really about finding different ways to charge the same taxpayers different fees, instead of working with the province on some sort of new deal around provincial funding, seeking new revenue sources from the federal government or grant programs or those types of things. When they said they wanted to diversify their revenue, I thought that they meant getting revenue from other places other than HRM taxpayers. But all these changes are all coming from HRM taxpayers, whether they're corporate or residential. So there's definitely a lot of frustration around the budget. I know the budget is tight; it's a complicated process, so we feel a bit bad for the councillors in terms of the process as well. But there's definitely some poor decisions being made, and this is one of them, in our opinion.
Paul, is this going to impact business? Is this going to keep people away from downtown?
Well, we certainly hope not. And one of the things that we'll be doing ourselves, but we hope HRM will participate in, is to say, listen, in a year's time, let's collect the data. Let's actually get business data, business impact data, right? Talk to the businesses and say, okay, have your sales been affected on Saturdays, right? Maybe we'll see in a year's time that sales went up. If that's the case, then that's great. But if we see that sales have been impacted, I would hope the council then would say, well, maybe we made the wrong decision, and maybe we need to take another choice. They also can measure things like how many individual parking sessions there are, how long those sessions are. So the nice thing about having the more modern digital equipment for parking is there's all sorts of data that can be collected. So our hope is that in our what we're saying to council is, don't just make this decision and walk away. We've now got lots of information that we can collect over the next 6, 12 months, and let's not be afraid to look at that data and maybe adjust course if what we see is that it actually is having a negative impact on downtown businesses.
I was downtown on Monday, and I parked on the Salter Street lot for 3 hours, and it cost me $14.
Yeah, it's no question, it's expensive, but at least with the Salter Street lot, all that money which is collected by Build Nova Scotia, it's a Crown Corporation, that goes back into all the great things that the waterfront does. So when you're back, especially in the summertime, you're back for the Evergreen Festival and enjoying the waterfront, with your family or visitors. At least you can hopefully think to yourself, well, at least that $14 that I paid, that went to help pay for all this and make it a great waterfront. That's a great local example. That's not what the city does with their parking revenue, and I think they should.
Paul, appreciate your time, sir.
Anytime.
That is Paul MacKinnon from the Downtown Halifax Business Commission. Not happy, as many of the BIDs are, not happy with the decision from City Council to raise parking rates by 25% and to do away with free Saturday parking. When we come back, there was a big to-do about the announcement of a wind farm being built in Nova Scotia, a conversation with the company behind the farm that's going to give you the ability to purchase your power from somewhere else than Nova Scotia Power. President of Renewall Energy, that would be Dan Roscoe, and he will be joining us after this. Welcome back to the Thursday, or as we like to call it, the Friday Eve edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. There have been political campaigns run on it. There's been discussion about it for years and years and years, and that is the monopoly of Nova Scotia Power. Well, energy company that's trying to change that received a $206 million loan from the Canada Infrastructure Bank to build a wind farm called Mersey River Wind that will allow Nova Scotians to purchase energy direct from them in an attempt to try and bust up that monopoly. The quote that caught my attention was, "It's not just another wind farm. Through Renewall, it's going to bring choice to electricity customers in Nova Scotia for the first time." The president of Renewall is joining us on the phone here on the show. Welcome to the show, Dan Roscoe.
It's great to be here with you, Dan.
It's been welcome news, I think, to many ears in Nova Scotia, at least the option or have the ability to purchase their electricity from somebody else than Elmira and Nova Scotia Power.
There's certainly a lot of excitement, yes.
Tell me a little bit about this farm, Dan. What's it going to look like? How much power is it going to generate? Where is it going to be? That kind of stuff.
So the Mersey River Wind Farm is located adjacent to the Mersey River in beautiful Queens County on Nova Scotia's South Shore. The project, once it's fully built, will have 33 wind turbines, 4.5 megawatts each, for a total of 148.5 megawatts. That makes it larger in capacity than any current wind farm in Nova Scotia, and in really rough terms represents about 5% of the province's electricity demand.
As I understand it, breaking it down into households, that this wind farm, when it's at full capacity, will be able to power, 50,000 homes?
Yeah, the equivalent generally of the average electricity customer in Nova Scotia, about 50,000 homes.
There is, when we build these projects, Dan, and I'm sure you've probably heard them, there are always concerns about environmental protection, birds, and those kind of things. Does that go into the development process of this?
Absolutely. We have been working on the Mersey River Wind Farm for almost 5 years now, about 4.5 years. We received a full environmental assessment approval back in 2023. Which involved extensive environmental reviews, flora, fauna, and we've also had a working group established with Sohoba First Nation, formerly known as Acadia First Nation, on the South Shore, as the Mersey River has a great cultural significance to the Mi'kmaq.
Right.
So all that have gone into the design and planning of the wind farm.
All right. The questions that got raised after this announcement, Dan, are how are you going to get that power, once it's generated in those turbines at the site, into Nova Scotian homes? Are you going to use Nova Scotia Power's grid?
Yes, we will. So the power that is produced by Mersey River Wind will be purchased by Renewall Energy, and Renewall Energy has the first retail electricity license in Nova Scotia. That is a program that's embedded in the Electricity Act. Renewall will pay a suite of tariffs to Nova Scotia Power to use their transmission and distribution system and related services to get that power directly to homes and businesses throughout the province.
Right. So the tariffs, is that kind of like renting the space in layman's terms?
Yeah. It's no different than paying a bridge toll, right, if you can remember back when we used to have to pay those. It's a cost of service. It's set by the Nova Scotia Energy Board, the actual cost. So it's a regulated tariff and well defined. So essentially, we're paying the same cost that the average cost of use of those services.
Fair enough. Dan, of course, many people will be interested in being able to purchase power from your group. How do they do that? How does it look? And I understand that you're able to lock rates for a significant period of time.
Absolutely. So part of our program is taking the long-term fixed price structure of renewable energy and passing that through directly to customers. Most renewable energy projects sell their projects under a long-term fixed price contract, and we are now taking that concept to customers. So to answer your first question, customers, both homeowners, small business, and larger customers, can sign up on our website on renewalenergy.ca, and we will enter with them a long-term fixed price contract. Those residential customers are limited to 5-year contracts, while larger customers can sign up as long as 20 years.
What happens if the wind doesn't blow?
Well, there will be hours in the year. Obviously, wind is variable. We live in a windy spot, and there's great alignment within the year it's windier in the winter when we use more energy.
Right.
But part of the tariffs that we pay with the utility is that we balance the energy that's produced and the needs of our customers on an hour-by-hour basis. So our customers will receive power when they need it, regardless if it's windy or not in that hour.
I think I read somewhere, Dan, that some of the power is already spoken for with big customers, and I think HRM is one of them.
That's right. We have 32 commercial and industrial customers already signed up, Halifax being one of the larger ones. So there will be hundreds of buildings throughout Halifax that will be powered by Renewall as customers start to take service in end of this year and early in 27.
That long-term contract, what's it going to look like in comparison to what people are paying for their power rates now with Nova Scotia Power?
Our rates will be competitive with Nova Scotia Power, and obviously the locked-in nature means that if Nova Scotia Power's rates continue as they have in the past to go up year over year, our customers will save more money as their contract wears on.
All right. I would imagine with some of that power already spoken for, Dan, and there would be some interest from the community in getting involved. Are you taking lots of calls?
Yeah, we've certainly had lots of interest on the website, lots of engagement. People are really interested from homeowners, apartment owners, anyone who pays a Nova Scotia Power bill will be eligible to transition. We're interested in obviously residential customers, larger businesses, exporters, people selling their product abroad. They have to compete in international markets, and selling anything into Europe and other markets now, you have to disclose your carbon footprint. So we think it's a real strategic advantage to be able to sign up for renewable energy and keep our energy dollars here, avoiding imported fossil fuels. And we actually think it will be a way to actually attract business to Nova Scotia because businesses looking to build, facilities internationally can now get renewable energy here directly in Nova Scotia, and that makes us a more attractive place to do business.
150 megawatts, is it going to be enough? And if it's not, is this thing scalable? Can you add more?
Yes, we are planning additional wind farms throughout the province, and ideally we've been bringing on more generation every year to meet what we expect to be a growing demand for our contracts.
Dan, we're almost out of time. If somebody wants more information, what's the best way to get it?
RenewallEnergy.ca, and you can also follow us on social feeds as well. We have a great FAQ session, and people can sign up right on our website.
Appreciate your time, sir.
Thanks very much, sir.
That is Dan Roscoe, the president of Renewall Energy, an alternative to Nova Scotia Power once it's up and running along the Mersey River down there, the beautiful south shore of Nova Scotia. Time for us to take a break. We're going to get an update on the news. When we come back, we've talked a lot about budget cuts with the province. We've talked a lot about the provincial budget. What does this mean to feed Nova Scotia and to those that depend on food banks in our province? Director of Community Partnerships, Innovation and Advocacy at Feed Nova Scotia, Sue Kelleher, will be joining us. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, continued coverage of the provincial budget, or as I've been calling it, the blizzard budget of last week. And this next organization put out a release saying that earlier in the week, the government of Nova Scotia unveiled Defending Nova Scotia, a budget that does little to defend our most vulnerable communities. The new budget, which includes reductions for supports as the heating rebate assistance program, tax relief measures that will leave lower-income residents in the lurch, and the elimination of funding for community programs across the province, is severely disappointing. While Feed Nova Scotia hoped to see a budget that would provide meaningful relief for those living in poverty, we're instead looking at a budget that cuts community grants, essential services, and jobs during a time of crisis. Very pleased to welcome back to the show today to tell us a little bit more from Feed Nova Scotia, its Director of Community Partnerships, Innovation, and Advocacy. That's Sue Kelleher. Sue, how are you?
Hi, Dan. Great to be here. And I'm well. Yeah,
This is kind of a double whammy for you folks, right? Because some of the programs that people rely on have been cut, and also we're looking at some funding reductions and some job losses in the sector as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Nova Scotia is so concerned about this budget and what it will mean for communities across Nova Scotia. And as we said in our response, we're in a food insecurity crisis and it's getting worse. And we know that we can't feed our way out of food insecurity. It's an income and affordability issue. And it requires bold government action that centres benefits really for the many. And we feel that this budget really misses that and is going to, in fact, cause a lot of harm in community.
I would imagine that you've already been hearing from some of the groups and organizations that your organization supports, and imagine they're concerned.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of concern in community, and we know that organizations have been releasing a lot of statements about what this will mean for them. When the budget was first released and we gave our response, we didn't have the details about organisations in particular that were going to face cuts. And we now see organisations coming out where equity-deserving communities will be disproportionately affected by the cuts. So African, Nova Scotian, Mi'kmaq, disability community, and there is food programming that's going to be cut as part of this budget as well. So we're really concerned. We've seen food bank use escalate a lot over the last number of years. We're up 69% since 2019 and up 50% since 2022. And even in the past year alone, food bank use has gone up 10%. So anything we see that, means cuts to community service and job loss is a really big concern for us. And we're expecting much more pressure on the food bank system in the year ahead.
Which is already stretched to the max, right?
Yeah, I would say, we have almost 140 organizations in our network who are really, really struggling to keep up with demand. And our deliveries of food have increased over the past number of years to try to meet an increasing demand, but the numbers and the demand continues to grow. And we are really clear that we cannot feed our way out of this crisis. It really is an income and affordability issue and requires really bold policy and brave policy moves that protect low-income communities and invest in bringing people's wages, people's income assistance, and people's affordability into check. And this budget does not do that in any way.
The old saying comes into effect, right? Give a person a fish they eat that day, teach them how to fish, and they can feed themselves for life, right?
Sure. And again, everything that we do, to provide, it's really a focus on providing emergency relief that day, in that moment. Folks that come to food banks in our network might get a few days worth of food every month. That is, a bridge that can help, but it is not going to fully meet people's needs. And having adequate income assistance if people are on it. Having jobs, retaining their jobs is very important. And we think that this budget is really going to cause a lot of harm on that front.
And it comes at a tough time during the year as well, right? I mean, we know how generous people are, particularly over the holidays and the drives and so on and so forth. But when we get into the Marches and Aprils, people's attention shifts.
Yeah, we do. It is true that we do get, a lot of support coming up to the holidays, November, December. And communities are amazing and support the work throughout the whole year. But the problem with relying on donations is that, people will give what they can when they can afford to. So when communities are struggling more and struggling to keep their own affordability in check and to be able to afford things in their own households, it creates less room for people to be able to support other folks. And we don't really, donations are really appreciated and Feed Nova Scotia really appreciates that. But, the solutions for these are policy changes at a government level, and we're not seeing that at all.
Feed Nova Scotia itself, do you get provincial funding? Has it been cut? How did that roll out?
We're not impacted by these cuts because we don't receive core funding from the province.
So you rely all on generosity of people.
Yes, lots of people, individuals, different organisations. We did receive, and it would have been announced before the holidays, one-time funding from the province as part of their announcement to redistribute some income from American liquor sales to the NSLC. So that's one-time funding, and again, very helpful in the moment. But again, sending food out to food banks that get used very quickly doesn't solve the issue, and people need ongoing support in that way.
Are you able to meet the demand, Sue, and this additional demand that you described earlier, is that going to stretch you past the limit?
I think, our networks and food bank volunteers who are all working really hard in community are already stretched beyond the limit. People are doing what they can to help their neighbours and help community. And people are finding it harder and harder every year. And every year, when we see the numbers continue to trend upwards, we say, oh my God, this can't continue, and it continues. Right. And so, community members are really committed, to try to help their neighbours, to support folks as much as possible. But we know this isn't the solution. And so, again, we're just very concerned, expecting to see numbers continue to increase in the year ahead with no end.
So if somebody wants to lend a helping hand or help out your group, what's the best way to do that?
Well, I mean, we always appreciate donations, but really aware that communities are really stretched. I would say one of the biggest things folks can do is reach out to their MLAs, let them know how they feel about this budget and that things need to change. One of the things that we've seen community organisations who are directly impacted by these budget cuts is to call for a reinstatement of the 1% HST that was taken down by 1% by the government last year. It has meant a loss of over $250 million in revenue for the province, and actually the difference people may feel in their pocket with a 1% HST change may not be that much year to year, but it's going to mean a lot for community organisations to be lost and for services and jobs to be lost in people's communities. So, we would say we would really encourage people to reach out to your MLA and to the Premier's office and to let folks know how you feel about this budget and what change you really need to see in communities.
Sue, I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sue Kelleher is the Director of Community Partnerships, Innovation and Advocacy at Feed Nova Scotia. When we come back, Nova Scotia, some of the provincial decisions on mining apparently are having an impact. The annual survey of mining companies has seen Nova Scotia move off the bottom of the list. We'll get into it with the director of the Fraser Institute Centre for Natural Resource Studies and co-author of this study, Elmira Aliakbari, when we come back. Welcome back to the program. There's been a lot of discussion inside the borders of Nova Scotia and abroad about resource development and taking advantage of natural resources that are plentiful here in Nova Scotia. There's been a lot of discussion, of course, about the wind with Wind West. There's been discussion about different onshore gases, onshore wind. But there was also a focus on maybe changing some of the rules in an effort to try and spur on interest in developing some of the other natural resources that we have here in Nova Scotia. That, of course, being uranium and gold mining and so on and so forth. Well, the Fraser Institute has released its annual global survey of mining companies. And of the 256 participants in 68 jurisdictions around the world, Nova Scotia has moved out of the basement and has moved up that list. I'm very pleased to to welcome to the program the co-author of said study, and that's Elmira Aliakbari. How are you?
I'm good. Hi. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I guess before we get into the actual nuts and bolts of this, tell me a little bit about what this survey is and what it's designed to do.
Sounds good. So we've once again surveyed mining investors from around the world to find out which jurisdictions are attractive or unattractive for mining investment based on government policies and mineral potential. Our survey spotlights policies such as taxes, regulations, trade barriers, etc., that govern the mining industry and affect investment decisions. This year, we had sufficient responses to compare and rank 68 jurisdictions around the world. Two Canadian provinces, Ontario and Saskatchewan, feature in the top 10 most attractive jurisdictions for mining investment, ranking second and third, respectively. Newfoundland is Canada's third highest ranked province, coming in 14th overall. While Ontario and Saskatchewan perform well in overall investment attractiveness and policy factors, several other provinces and territories do not perform well on the policy front. Yukon, for instance, despite ranking 11th for mineral potential, fall to 47th when considering policy factors alone. So this means that this jurisdiction has failed to capitalize on its strong mineral potential due to a lack of a solid policy environment. BC is another example. This province performs poorly on policy factors despite having strong mineral potential. In Atlantic Canada, while Newfoundland performs well on policy factors, Nova Scotia and New Brunswick lag behind. Overall, there is significant room for improvement in the policy environment across several Canadian jurisdictions.
Nova Scotia, though, showing some improvement, right? The last time we did this, they were right on the basement.
Yes, that's correct. So we have seen significant improvement for Nova Scotia this year compared to last year. Last year, this province ranked 76 on the policy factors alone. This year, we see that it has moved up to ranking 32nd. Despite the improvement, we see that there's still significant room for further improvement for this province.
So some of the policy changes that we've seen here from the Houston government appear to at least be making a dent in this.
It seems that yes, those policy changes have changed the perceptions surrounding the policy environment in the province. But similar to previous years, we continue to see investors citing policy uncertainty as a key deterrent to investment in various Canadian jurisdictions, including in Nova Scotia. In particular, uncertainty surrounding protected areas and disputed land claims remains a top concern for almost all Canadian jurisdictions. Other areas of concern include uncertainty surrounding environmental regulations, as well as regulatory duplication and inconsistency. For instance, consider that 75% of respondents for New Brunswick and 60% for Nova Scotia indicated that uncertainty concerning protected areas was a deterrent to investment, compared to only 11% for Utah and 21% for Nevada. So the message is clear. Policy uncertainty in some areas is a key deterrent to investment in many Canadian jurisdictions, including Nova Scotia.
So it's not necessarily that we don't have the resources, the mineable resources inside the borders here of Nova Scotia. The investment and the companies that would invest in extracting these things are concerned that the regulations would make it expensive or difficult to do.
Yes, in our survey, as I pointed out, we take into account the impact of both government policies and mineral potential. And Nova Scotia's performance, or relatively poor performance, is in part due to a lack of a solid policy environment. On mineral potential, it seems that this province doesn't have a very strong, mineral potential in the eyes of investors. But on policy factors, we see the same thing. There is the province doesn't perform well on policy factors either. And that's the area I think that the government can improve. They can address some of the policy barriers in the province to make sure that the province becomes more attractive for mining investment.
Is that what Ontario's doing right to be near the top of the list in Canada here?
So for Ontario, yes, we have seen a significant improvement this year compared to last year in terms of policy factors. In several areas, we saw that the province improved. One particular area was the permit times. In our survey, we asked respondents to tell us about the timelines and how long it takes for them to get exploration permits. And we see that Ontario has improved a lot on that front. And overall, it seems that the province has been able to match its strong mineral potential with a solid policy environment. And as a result, we see that now Ontario ranks second globally for mining investment.
Elmira, appreciate your time.
Thanks again for having me. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. It looks like some of Premier Houston's changes are at least having a small impact when it comes to the regulatory environment. But if you can recall or remember back to when the Premier opened up the uranium mining here in Nova Scotia last year, and there wasn't any takers. And some of the concerns from the investment community, the mining investment community, was over-regulation and some big question marks about some of the things our last guest was talking about, being protected areas and so on and so forth. There's a balance, right? There's a balance between mineral extraction and taking advantage of our natural resources, but doing it in a way that we don't do too much damage to the environment, and we end up further back than when we started. So that policy look, this annual survey of mining companies certainly takes a look at that. And Nova Scotia moving up the chart, but still a lot of work to do on that front. That's going to about do it here for this edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. Very thankful to all of our guests who joined the show and imparted their knowledge upon us. I learned something every day when we do this show, that is for sure. Thank you to all of you who took the time out of your busy schedule and to dial the numbers and join the conversation. I'm still getting emails. In fact, a couple of people very rightly have pointed out that time change actually started in my hometown in 1908 in Port Arthur, which then became amalgamated with Fort William to create the amalgamated municipality of Thunder Bay, and it happened right there in my hometown. So not that our hometown had anything to do with it, but thank you for sending me those nuggets of history. It's I still don't know, still haven't heard a good enough excuse to why we have to do this every year. But anyway, might be something you want to bring up in the Friday Free-for-All. We're going to do that tomorrow. Often imitated, never duplicated. I look forward to that one every day, as does Vanessa. Again, thanks to all of you who dialed the numbers and joined the conversation. I truly appreciate it. Tomorrow on the program, it is the Fabulous Friday edition. We've, of course, got a big show lined up for you. A conversation about the Iran war. Robert Hewish, who we've talked to on international affairs a number of times, will be joining us as that continues to escalate. What does this mean for the region? What does this mean for us in Canada? Will we see Article 5 instituted? It doesn't appear that the NATO Secretary General is considering that, at least at this point. But with these things, my goodness, right? It can change on a dime. The war is having an impact on us at home when it comes to gasoline and diesel prices. How long before that hits the grocery store? We'll have a conversation with petroleum analyst Patrick DeHaan from Gas Buddy. Of course, Alistair will be here. I think you're going to like the weekend forecast. I'm not going to steal his thunder, pun intended. He'll be here. Cecil will be here as well, and many other surprises tomorrow. I hope you can join us. My enduring gratitude and thanks to Vanessa Vandenez on the other side of the glass. Without her, we just cannot do this show. It's going to be a wonderful day tomorrow, going to be a wonderful weekend. A little bit cold tonight, I know, but we're almost through it. Get out there and enjoy what Nova Scotia has to offer. We're so lucky to live in the place that we do. Despite some of its problems and some of its concerns, it's still pretty cool to live here, isn't it? Have a great day, everybody. Be well. And remember, most importantly, be kind to one another.